Right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Katie Burke, and I'm the government strategist at Laserfiche in the marketing department. Welcome to IG 103, Customer Story, Transparent Records Management in Action. Now, before we get started, I wanted to cover just a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who haven't attended one of our customer sessions yet, we're recording these sessions, and we want to make sure that we get all of your questions recorded in our tapes. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and I'll try to run around with a mic and get to you. All right, so now that we've covered that little bit of logistics, let's go ahead and get started. It's my honor and privilege to introduce today's speakers, Maureen Reynolds and Greg Potter from Tompkins County, New York. You guys got to see a little taste of where they're from. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. But Maureen serves as the Deputy County Clerk and Records Management Officer, and Greg is the CIO. Together, they've collaborated to make Laserfiche the standard for records management across over 20 departments. Among government employees, it's not very often that we hear the words love and records management in the same sentence. But Maureen is really excited today to share why she loves transparent records management and how you can implement a similar system in your organization. So without further ado, let's hand it over. Please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Good morning, or good afternoon. I'm from the East Coast. I have no idea what time it is. We hope you enjoyed the little video we had. Ithaca is really kind of funky and uber liberal, and our mayor was elected at 24 years old, so it's pretty cool. It's a cool place to live. One of the things that we have bumper stickers on all our cars is they all say Ithaca is gorgeous. It's ranked one of the top 10 best places to live. It's America's most enlightened city. It's the best college town, which we know. The smartest city in America, America's foodiest towns. There's actually more restaurants per capita in Ithaca than in New York City. And the food is good. And we have over 100 waterfalls in our little area. So it's really a tourist destination. It's beautiful. So here we are, actually with the county where we are, and I have the city clerk here with me today, Julie Holcomb. We are in the shadow of Cornell University and Ithaca College. They're on the two hills overlooking where we sit. So we started imaging in the county clerk's office in about 2001. We started with Day Forward, and what we ended up doing was we went back in time and scanned almost 200 years worth of records. We deployed a web portal service for remote access to these records. We worked with our courts. We've implemented paperless processing with the court system. And we are now e-recording our land records, which I'm unfortunate to say that New York State is the 49th state in the country to start e-recording, but we are one of the first counties to do it. So in Ithaca, like I said, we're funky. We're a college town. Sustainability is big. We're green. We have smart office initiatives.
Yeah, from the IT perspective, when we get into some of these projects that we're going to talk about today, one thing that's been extremely helpful or beneficial from the IT side of things is that we require any of our departments to go through something known as the Smart Office Initiative. So our county puts up a pool of dollars every year, and the departments have to kind of submit and compete for the use of that money. And the Smart Office really allows us to work with a local community college, another college in our area, which is the Tompkins County Community College. And they handle a business process analysis for the work that we do. So we work with the departments or the work groups to really define their process before I'm willing to jump into it on the IT side if it's a process-driven project that leads into a Laserfiche project in the end.
One of the things that's really important from our perspective too, and from the counties, is that we're trying to promote more work from home and from the job site in the field. Our highway department, our facilities, our judges, our ADAs, so when they're in court, we want them to have the most up-to-date information. We had disaster recovery concerns in Sandy, and then a few of the other storms we had a few years ago. We had a few of our local counties get hit fairly hard. In the county just to the south of us, they were flooded. They lost records from the 1700s, and it was a $3 million bill from FEMA in order to have them restored back from wet paper. So it was very important for us to do that. Another county near us, Schoharie, the river came right through their office, wiped out their records, and it was a $13 million bill. So it was very important for us to make sure this didn't happen. You know, it's my biggest fear is to get our name on the front of the paper. Why didn't they take care of this? So another thing too is big is open government. We want to be transparent. For years and years, I've always said, people say, well, government's hiding stuff. Well, we're not hiding stuff, we just can't find it. So, you know, we're trying to make it more open so that people realize that we're not hiding stuff. And so we're trying to push it out to public portals so that what's really public, they can search themselves, and our FOIL requests will go way down in our staff time looking for them. And then we had a county administrator leave and one come on, and all of a sudden, within a month before the end of the budget year, they called me up and said, we're going to give you the records program, because I work in the county clerk's office, which is the court in the land records. And they're like, we want you to take over the records program and do something with that, something similar you've done. So I thought, either the old guy hates me or the new guy hates me, but this is my punishment. So they gave us a building, and it was an old library where the roof leaks and the boiler's ready to blow up, and it's a perfect place to put records. So here's our pathetic old building. At one time, it was a beautiful library. But we walked in, and there was 9,000 boxes with a way outdated tracking system. We had no idea what we were getting into. And with the gift of this records project, they said, oh, and you get no new money and no new staff. So that was our problem. We had all these boxes. We had no idea how to track them. Like I said, no money, and I didn't have the staff for people to go looking through boxes and retrieving files and doing, you know, it was awful. I couldn't believe what they gave us. I actually called my IT director. I think I cried a little that night and said, what can we do? And he had seen Laserfiche, so we thought we'd buy it. When we bought it, we actually thought we were just going to be putting barcodes on boxes and tracking the boxes. And we came to the first conference 5 years ago, which was really glad we did, and we went home and told the county administrator, we have an idea, can we try something? They were planning on either restoring the building it was in or building a new building. We're like, give us a little time, let us try something. So what we did was, go back. Sorry. That's okay. What we did is, we're kind of the hub. You know, we can't, no new money, no new staff. It's not like we can just go ahead and do it. So we got the software, which was a Laserfiche. We outsourced the majority of our scanning to an imaging vendor, and then we needed our IT to bump up our network because I came to him and said, I need to drop millions and millions of images into something, and he's like, no. Yes, I am. So in 2 years, we scanned 9,000 boxes. We eliminated the need for a new building. All the records previously stored in this building are now scanned, shredded, or stored and incorporated into Laserfiche. It just, you know, we actually saved our county between $2.8 and $5.5 million, depending on which option they decided. We actually were highlighted at the keynote address in January 2012, and Laserfiche ran this ad in The Economist. So every time I go to my county administrator for needing money, I'm like, look it. So we took care of the big problem which we had, which was that old record center. And then we're looking around at the county going, oh my God, they're still making paper. They're creating on the computer, they're printing it off, they're putting it in a box, and then they're putting it in a file cabinet, and then 3 or 4 years later, say, take this for me and track it. I'm going, no, we can't do this. So now we have to go around and teach departments on how to, you know, to be proactive and not make more paper. So we started off with some projects, and mind you, like I said, we thought we were just going to track boxes, and these were little baby steps we were taking at first. So we went to our legislature, and they have the annual books of proceedings, which was about 200 years worth. And I walked up to the clerk and said, look, I need to take your books, and I want to scan them and OCR them so that, you know, you can just text search it. And she's like, oh, you know, I'll probably have to get a resolution, and it'll take weeks. I'm like, I'll bring them back in 2 days. So 2 days later, we brought them back. They're all scanned and OCR'd, and it just saves them an immense amount of time on searching for things that people look for. Then we hit up our county administrator, since he's the man who holds the money, and we did the contracts, insurance certificates, and different things for them. The DA, that was a big thing. They had 2,000 boxes of files just in our record center, let alone their office. We've done every map in the county, tax maps, assessment, payroll records, which are very important. They have to be long-term retention, and our birth and death certificates. So we go down through, we did personnel. Personally in our office, we are in charge of all the criminal files. We did 200 years of those and stored those in Laserfiche so the judge can access those at any time from the bench. The ADAs can look at them. We had a couple, like the sheriff's department down here, they had rooms and rooms of records, and we cleared them out, scanned them, and they now have officers sitting in them with computers doing work. And we cleared out their garage, which was full of paper, and they can now park cars in them. So it's pretty amazing. Office for the Aging and our legislature were two departments that were moving. And so what we did was, rather than move files, we went in, scanned up all the records, and they took their office furniture and themselves. So it was pretty cool. They felt they were really happy. They really got into it because they're like, oh, if we don't have to pack it, move it, it's great. So we've been through practically most of the departments. We have 26 or 27 departments in the county. There's a few we have not yet attempted, DSS being the biggest one, but we have to, work out some other things first. So my favorite saying is I go in with a hand truck and I talk to them about Laserfiche, and then as they're talking, I box up their files and I wheel them out, and I'm like, trust me, you're gonna love it. And I never bring the paper back. Never, ever, ever give them the paper back. My biggest concern is if I give them the paper back, first of all, I pay to have it scanned, and now I'm going to pay to store it again. Doesn't make sense. But then if they add a piece of paper to that file at any time and don't scan it, then our file is not good. So we even offer them, if they're really nervous about it, I'll hold them somewhere for 6 months or a year, and if they don't ask for it, then it hits the shredder. I've not had one single person complain yet. What we do is we basically go into their office, we open their file drawers, we take a look, we ask them what they do with it so we can figure out workflows, and then we try to mimic their folder structure so that they're very comfortable, because you can have the best software in the world, but if you do not make your end user comfortable with it, they will not use it. So we try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. And for Greg, it was important to have a single software application across departments and that it had integration capabilities. You want to talk about some of those?
Yeah, earlier on when we were looking at an enterprise solution, I had learned enough in my experience with Tompkins County and working with the 27 to 30 departments to know that they all started to head in the direction of a content management system. Most of them internally within software or systems that we were currently supporting, but really didn't deal with the records management issue. And then we started also venturing into cloud-hosted solutions for some of our departments. And so it was important to look at the records management part of the cloud-hosted solutions. They can store data, we can produce reports and so forth, but any of the static information that was coming out of those systems, we have now a mandate in the county that we organize what those reports are, and they get saved locally within the Laserfiche system. So they get outputted as a PDF file and dropped into Laserfiche. And that's true in about 4 applications or systems that were on that list that have been pretty significant. One of those being the minutes and agendas and all the supplemental information for our public meetings through our legislature's office and their committees. That's all a hosted solution. That's all automated, and it's a great product. But the outcome of that, once a year, we dump into Laserfiche for long-term records management. So just as an example.
So this is just a little bit of fun, because I like fun things. I'm not a very serious person. If you come to my office, it doesn't look like a government office. There's like, weird things hanging from the ceiling and Christmas lights all the time. So anyways, we decided, even if we get rid of all the paper, there's still some archival paper. There's some we have to maintain. We didn't want to build a building. We didn't want to do all that. So up the road from us, there used to be a nuclear warhead storage facility, which they say we're never stored there. Actually, when I went to Cornell, that was a big thing. We'd all go up there and, picket it, try to get in. But I now have a key I can get in. So what we did is for our permanent archival paper, our data backup, and our microfilm storage. We rented this bunker, released it for 10 years. It's temperature and humidity controlled, and like I said, it can take a direct hit from a missile launcher. So this is just fun stuff. So you go into this thing, you have to have there's these huge massive doors, I have to pull them open, there's another door, and then when you used to go in when there was the nuclear warhead that wasn't really stored there, they would, if you actually could breach the system, what would happen was a big net of knives would drop over the warhead, and then they would suck the oxygen out of the air. But it's great now, it's great for records, so we've been storing our records up there now, and we're going to do data backup. We have because we go so paperless, you just can't say we're going to go paperless. You have to have all this disaster recovery and backup. So we have 2 server rooms at the county, and this will be our 3rd backup up there. So here's some pictures of the bunker. I know it's trivia, but it's fun. Don't get to see them very often. It's like Cold War up there. And some of the concerns from the county was we're getting old. There's a lot of institutional knowledge there. Our databases are all out. There's some that are outdated that IT doesn't want to support anymore. There are all these, created ones, and that person leaves and no one knows how to take care of it. We didn't want that to happen. We wanted security of our records because you can just pretty much walk into an office and start going through a file cabinet if someone's going to the bathroom. And we didn't want, that the problem being with that. We have too many employees, so if a new employee comes in, I don't know when they come in, so how am I going to tell them? Actually, when I got hired at the county, I walked in and said, oh, the guy who did the job before me was awful. I threw out all his stuff. I had no idea. No one had told me. And thank God I've been there forever, so it doesn't matter now. And, for IT, it was important to start to think about cloud-hosted county applications. And so, Greg?
Yeah, as I talked a little bit earlier on about our Smart Office initiative, I can't stress enough how helpful this has been. And it's great because you really get the work group or work team buy-in as you start a project with them. So there's Maureen's talking a lot about the archival of records, in boxes, and that's all great, and we've got that all digitized. But then, of course, it turns over into a different type of project from day one moving forward for all the other, new initiatives that come up that hit the IT kind of work schedule. And so Maureen and I have gotten into a pretty good working relationship and being included, involved from a records perspective, from an IT perspective with the departments as these ideas are initiated or funded through county government. And it's a great strategy that we've used. It's through a local kind of business group at our community college. It takes 2 to 3 days. We sit them down in a room. We whiteboard everything. We produce the documentation. We ask them to modify and sign off on it before we start even to looking at alternatives or solutions or spending any money. Sometimes we can handle it entirely within Laserfiche, which is great. Other times we've got to look outside and then look at how we're integrating and using Laserfiche as the back end for the repository. So our payroll system is a really good example of that. We've automated all of the output of our reports every 2 weeks in our payroll system. So we're no longer distributing, or we used to create 3 binders of paper, which then got converted digitally at the end of the process through some custom reports that get dumped now into Laserfiche through the workflow process automatically, and the departments now have the ability to go in and access those biweekly reports themselves, and we're not sending them out as PDFs even anymore. So a lot of things like that we're really focusing on now, which have been great for us. And it gets people into the Laserfiche system in the back end, and it gives them a real purpose or necessity to use Laserfiche. So they're just small things, but they've really benefited. And since we've started working on this over the course of the past 3 years, you saw the list of about 16 previous archive projects. We've got a list of backlogged ideas and concepts from county departments that is probably going on about 25 right now. And how we pick and choose them is the challenge. So it's kind of, Maureen and I in the back office saying, okay, who's ready, who's really going to succeed in this, and who can we work with, unfortunately. And, at this point, we don't really do a whole lot of analysis at the criteria level to look at the best decision on how we start a project. But it's kind of a gut reaction for us right now. I think that's going to change because we're starting to get a lot more pressure to work with departments to help them through this process as well. Our social services department being one of them. Probably the most complicated large department in county government across New York State. The challenge with some county agencies in New York State or departments at the county level is that they're also mandated by New York State and use a lot of New York State systems. And so they've been waiting for the state to respond to things, and they see us being successful and positive in the direction very quickly with the smaller departments and want to see that type of service. But it's a little bit more complicated when we get involved with those kind of projects.
So one of the things we do too is because, I'm the records manager and people, I don't want them to do what I did many years ago, but we had one disagreement with the county admin. They have certificates of insurance, and for them, they only need them for 1 year. And so they were throwing them away. And they wanted us to make them disappear from their repository after 1 year. And I turned around and said, okay. And so we went back and wrote a workflow. So when they go to replace the image after 1 year, it shoots back to our records management folder for the remaining 6 years, and they never know. I showed the county administrator this presentation before I came. He goes, "You're doing that?" I said, "Yeah, but don't tell your staff." Because they don't care. They only want to use it for 1 year, and so they're happy, and then I'm happy meeting our legal storage requirements. And it was a simple little workflow. And one of the great things about Laserfiche is, as much as we enjoy having a very good IT department, I have one person in my staff who she's not a computer person, but she's good at it, and she loves Laserfiche, and she does a lot of this by herself without having to bring in, our IT. Generally, what we do is we try it ourselves. If not, we look at our IT, and then if not, we go to our VAR for training. So another thing we have too is when you have a new hire, you have 1 million forms to fill out. Each of those forms, from New York State, we're mandated to keep them different times. It's very confusing. Some are like 3 years after expiration, some are long-term, some are for retirement. And these are all, we hire people, just basic interns, to come in. They don't know all these rules. So what we do is we've created in the template field drop-down boxes. They just pick out what the title is, and then it shoots it off and stores it for the appropriate amount of time, and they don't have to know. And so here's that one. I think our VAR helped us with this one. A little more complicated. Now, since we were doing all this at the county, and we work with New York State Archives a lot for funding, they pretty much told us that the best way to get any money in the future through the grants, the archives grants, was to look at shared services. And so we kind of looked around. I went to a records symposium. I leaned over to someone in the room and said, "Do you know any town clerks here?" And she goes, "Oh, I am a town clerk." And we started talking. I asked them to invite me to their next meeting, and I met with 6 of them that came that cold December day and told them about this program. And we decided to try to apply for a shared service grant. We all have the same problems. We all have all this tremendous amount of documents. And a lot of our smaller towns, they don't have any IT. So, when we go, they get real excited when they see my IT director come in the room because they're getting to ask him questions. And so I asked one clerk, I'm like, "So how do you back up your records?" She says, "Well, I have a thumb drive, and I put it in my car." And I'm like, "No, you just can't do that. There's no microfilm. You just go out." So I went out to all these towns. I looked around their records rooms. And so we applied for a grant. And we applied for a shared service grant. We were successful. We got $140,000 that first year for our 6 towns, and it paid for their licensing. It paid to increase our network capacity, and it paid to have all their records scanned. We did their minutes and building permits first. Then what we did is we met with them, and we had to, we're big into acronyms in Ithaca. So it's called Tompkins Shared Services Electronics Records Repository, teaser. So, and then after that one, we applied for another shared service grant. We were brought in the city of Ithaca, and they're here. Julie's here with us. She's one of our partners, and we're really excited. We also brought in the remaining towns and one village, and I've just recently been out to meet with the rest of the villages, and they're going to come in with us in this next round. So we'll have a total of 20 partners. So we established a user group. We meet every few months, and I throw a party, they all come. It's amazing to see. There's a whole room of people. They all come. We have General Code come down, and they do some training. We do webinars. We have our imaging vendor there, so we have questions, and we all work out problems together. It's pretty cool. And they're all really nice. You know, not only do we get together to do Laserfiche stuff, but we learned that there's redundancies between our governments, and we try to eliminate those. You know, we're all friends now. We talk, we've seen each other's stuff, we talk about it, we've established this relationship, which is really important. And as we go through, you know, I'll say, oh, I've already scanned all that stuff at the county, and you have it in your records room. I'm like, I just drop it in your repository, and then they can throw out their stuff. So it's really amazing to see. So this is our little poster we have here for teaser. We're going to actually have T-shirts and bags made. One of the clerks is going to make them because she's so proud that we have this group. So basically when we did it, you know, we don't want to be the big bad county and tell everybody what to do with their records. First of all, I don't have enough time to tell them what to do with their records. So what we did is we gave them their own repository. We're hooked into them all currently, and then when they're ready for us to disconnect, we will do that. Some of them I think will stay with us forever because they just don't have the IT that we have, and it's really good for them to get in the room and see. We know we talk about scanners, and he can answer all the questions they have. So they have their own dedicated repository. They have their own access, and so we always tell them, I've given you a shovel. It's a great tool. I hope you use it. You know, so we work together over different things that we all share, all the same problems. Anything else you want to talk about?
The other point on the shared services too is we did spend a great deal of time going out to the communities, talking to the elected officials at the town, village, and not so much the city level, and also at the county legislative level too. So we had the official approval and sanction of our bylaws and our governance structure, and kind of a defined budget that gets kind of reviewed every year for this shared services project. So we've got a couple examples like that in Tompkins County, and we also have this larger Council of Governments group that kind of understands the value and the importance of this. So it was pretty easy at the political level for us to make this case, both financially and from a supports perspective. Certainly the impact on IT has been significant, but you know, we're getting by, we're doing okay. And I can honestly tell you the benefit for IT in a project like this, particularly with the grant funding that's available in New York State, is the funding that's come through is pretty dramatically improved our network infrastructure, and so we've really jumped into virtualization and SAN with 2 redundant data centers and soon to be off-site. So it has significantly helped in the payment or the cost of implementing the system as well. So, and benefited other county departments for other reasons.
Oh, and one of the things now is we're going out and talking to other counties in New York State because they're just not catching on yet. So we're hoping that if we go out and make the circuit this summer, that, you know, more counties will think about it. But we've had lots of calls from other town and village clerks, because my town clerks get talking to their friends, and they've been calling up wanting to come in with us. And so that's probably something we may consider, whether he likes it or not, that we'll bring in other municipalities and maybe some of our smaller neighboring counties. But those are negotiations we haven't quite made yet.
Other IT directors across the state talk to me as well, so that seems to be the problem.
So any questions? Sure.
What documents are you storing permanently in that bunker?
Just things that are archival of quality, something unique to Tompkins County. Usually things that have to do with, we have old like veterinary licenses from the early 1800s. We have soldier licenses, some old handwritten things that are kind of interesting. Some of the unique murder cases, you know, the old houses of ill repute, different things that were kind of historical and unique to us. Because, you know, I go into departments and they all say our stuff is permanent and important, and I'm like, yeah, well, every county has the same stuff. It's not like it's really that permanent or important. You know, in my office I have deed books. Well, we all have deed books, you know, so it's just because they're handwritten doesn't make them archival. If it was something unique to us, being in the Finger Lakes, something of the lakes, something, you know, the waterfalls, something that's unique to us. But our microfilm is stored there also. We used to store at I won't say the name, of a microfilm storage vendor that was a lot of money, and this is a whole lot cheaper. So we, it was kind of just thinking outside the box, which I think we tend to do in Ithaca. We're usually way out of the box, but got to be drawn back in.
Thinking about all the documents you've put into, I'm over here.
Oh,
in the
sorry.
back.
I can't see
All the
the lights hitting
documents
me.
that you've put into Laserfiche. Do you have a count on how many documents you've got in there? And then follow-up
I am
questions.
so happy you asked that
What-
question.
yeah, and then wait, one more question. What
me answer the
percentage
first
of
one first.
those? What percentage of those are formally declared as records with retention policies?
Well, I can answer the first question. I'm going to pass the second one to Maureen. We are just under 13 million images in our system, and it grows every day.
In the records retention, we work with each department and then assign them into which folder they go into. In their folder, each department only sees their own stuff, and they only see what they need to see. They probably have it alphabetically, but then we store it in the records management part, for as long as it needs to be stored there. And we have the shortcut back for them. They don't realize it's a shortcut.
What percentage of your Laserfiche documents do you think are formal records?
Oh, they're all in there.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm paying the bill, so they're all in there.
So just a question about how it took you 2 years to scan that many records. Did you guys use multiple outside companies to do this, or did you guys scan this in-house? Or
No, we outsourced it. We have Challenge Industries is in our, it's a kind of a NYSID company. It's New York State Industries for the Disabled. And we had been working with them for many years and have set up an imaging system with them. We've supplied the computers and scanners and the training, and they've been really good to work with. And we just said, we got a big job coming, and they hired on their people and trained them, and we worked closely with them.
And I'm sorry, just to follow up on that, did you design templates for all these different departments, or were those already kind of pre-designed for you?
What was that?
Templates and fields?
Oh, we do all that. Yeah,
Okay.
we work with them, and then we set it up. The departments, they're pretty much overworked just like we are, but at least we understand Laserfiche. So I have one staff member who does all this.
Thank you.
Thank you. What line of business applications did you integrate Laserfiche with?
We have an integration with our payroll system, our financial system. We are doing a project right now for a permit management system for our environmental health department, so anything. And then, the big one that's coming up is our district attorney's office. So we're looking at New York State hosted solution for their case management that we're migrating to, and the output of all of those static reports that ADA or district attorney typically carries around with them as paper files that Maureen then scans will be integrated directly into Laserfiche locally. And then we're setting up and expanding access points on our Wi-Fi system in the courtrooms, so they'll be carrying tablets as well if they trust it. Most of them still are very suspicious. So that'll be the real big test that's going to kind of pull it all together.
I'll work on them.
Yes. Let's see, I'm trying to think if there's any others that we've worked on. Time cards, so we're kind of moving from paper time cards to, we've got a, time and attendance piece of software, but we still, want to produce static reports, in case we have to go back to it for other reasons and the data isn't available. So that's the other big one that we're looking at.
What was the payroll and finance system, and were there any challenges integrating?
The payroll system is Infor Lawson.
Okay.
The financial system is SunGard Penimation.
Okay.
No problems there. We probably end up doing more custom report writing than we should, so we have kind of control over it and working with the people. It just automatically gets dropped into folder, and then Laserfiche picks up from there.
I see. Okay. Great. Thank you.
You had mentioned satisfying the courts. I'm sure you have workflow and all of that, and you have to put the metadata in for any record that you incorporate into Laserfiche. But you had mentioned you had 9,000 boxes that you incorporated into, that were imaged into the system. How did you get through the evidentiary value that a judge would want?
Those were all closed cases.
Okay.
So they were all decided. We did keep out any evidence. Well, I always say if we can put it in a scanner, we'll scan it too. We've scanned all kinds of things. We lay a gun down and whatever, at least we'll get pictures of it there. And then we do keep that. We do keep some of the, we've converted most of the DVDs, the VHS tapes, old slides from the 60s. We had them converted. We convert WAV files and put in there when you are arrested and start spilling your guts before you ask for an attorney. So, yeah, we have all that stuff in there.
Okay, no,
Evidentiary, I don't know all about that, but they're all closed.
Okay, no, what I was thinking is you bring your electronic records to the judge.
Yeah.
And the judge looks at it, and this is the old stuff.
Right.
And he says, well, how do I know this electronic record hasn't been altered? Where's the metadata for this electronic record? How were you able to put the metadata for the old records?
IT.
Well, we do use the audit features in Laserfiche, so that we can always rely on that. But I don't know how exactly we set up the DAs, but if they're closed records like that, then there is no ability to edit them in Laserfiche. So that's kind of how we set them up, and at least on the scanned versions of stuff, I'm not really sure how any recordings and things like that are stored in Laserfiche. I haven't been involved in that piece. I know Maureen in her strategy in terms of entry and metadata in terms of indexing for information, particularly with older records, is we tend to OCR quite a bit when we can and do as little of the template indexing work as we need to. So we try to rely on that from our scanning vendor initially, and then we'll pass it off. If the department is involved and they want to expand on that, then it's their responsibility. So we'll set some minimum standards. So the district attorney case management piece in Laserfiche is going to go through a transition here pretty quickly, and we'll see what happens once we cross from the archived into the active records. But most of the judges locally are familiar with the system because we've worked with state courts independently as another project, and they like it, they're familiar with it, and they're very comfortable with it already.
I wanted to ask, do you have public portals into various repositories, and are you thinking about it? Do you have
Not
policy
yet.
decisions?
That's where we're venturing. It was very important for us to come to this conference and learn about the forms part and the portal part, because we've just been, putting all these images in there and boom, 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 taking care of problems. Well, now we need to start using it, and that's probably our biggest priority is the public portal. I think, each municipality, we want them to make their own decisions, as they always have about their records, and we're not going to enforce anything with them. So it's important that they all have their own public portal, or their own public repository and their private repository, and then we're going to do that at the county also, but we haven't, shortly, I think, when we get back from here was our next.
Yeah, the software is configured. It's working. We just haven't gone through the process within the teaser group and even at the county level to really categorize data before we jump into that. So we've got a new policy on the IT side, which is a data classification policy. And part of that is going to be trying to define across county government what information and data clearly is in the public domain and doesn't require any special permissions and approval. If that data set then is in Laserfiche, then we'll have it authorized to open it up to the public. So we've been a little bit concerned about how we're going to transition into that public portal. We can start with the obvious ones, which are the historic archived minutes and agendas and things like that. But once we move past that, I'm a little bit concerned until we have something in writing and a policy set and data classifications defined.
Anything else? Oh, sure.
And speaking with your counterparts in the Southwest region where I represent as a VAR, they have the aha moment like you do. They have the desires to kind of come into the current century. Mm-hmm. You guys probably had a decision-making process you had to go through past the aha moment. Where I'm at currently is he wants it, he knows he likes it, he knows it's where they need to go. It's just kind of convincing the political factors that be from, he's a court clerk.
Right.
So of a county. So how can you help us to, as a VAR, kind of push them over the edge to?
I'm probably not the perfect person to ask. My motto is let's do it and let them find out about it. We did the majority. I let the county administrator in on this, and you know, we are fortunate. Our legislators are, a lot of them are from either Cornell alum or retirees from there, so they kind of get the idea that technology saves money. So we were fortunate that I just said, let us try a few things, and then we're going to come back and give you a report. And then I came back and said, we saved you $5.5 million. You know, look at how much we want to not invest all that, but, you know, maybe 10%. I think he said 1%. We started still negotiating. But, you know, so we're trying, you know, to do that as best as possible. And then I go out and tell them about the successes later. Most of the departments we picked first we knew would be good success things. People we worked well with, people who were going to be receptive, and then we could use that to further launch ourselves down for more. But we've done it in steps. I did drive him crazy, though, when I came back and said, we're going to do this.
So Southwest New York State? Oh, Oklahoma. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was going to suggest, I'm not sure if it's true in other states, but there's a state archives program, and there is grant funding. A lot of kind of what we started, you know, was initiated through that project. We were successful in getting funding, and it kind of snowballed from there.
Kind of some of our concern is the Supreme Court has some governance over what the county does.
Yeah.
They do, but you know, we work with them. Before I came here, before we left the other day, we had some questions for the Office of Court Administration in New York State. Fortunately, he's a former county clerk and he's a friend of mine, and we talked about some things. And you know, I think as long as you keep people in the loop without too much information, because you know, I always say you got to dumb it down because they start to overthink the process. Ours is just to get it scanned and then we'll, you know, get it in and we'll start working with it. Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask some of these questions.
So I have a question about once you decide to do the public portal part of it and you've got all these documents in there, and there's probably parts of some documents that aren't public. For example, I'm a city clerk, and some of the liquor licensing stuff is public, but the phone numbers aren't, the financial stuff isn't. So how do you deal with going back?
Well, we wouldn't put it on the public portal then. Like I said, it'll be up to each individual clerk, you know, through the FOIL process, and what they feel is acceptable, they can redact it and then send it out, whatever the requirements are. You know, I'm not the FOIL officer in the county, so I'm not sure, but we don't want everything out there. We want them to do just like they did with the paper. You know, keep it similar, we're comfortable with it, and then what is truly public we'll put up for the public to search.
So like the minutes of meetings and stuff that are no-brainers?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
What sort of technology upgrades did you have to do to be able to have this available to these other sites?
No.
Available to other municipalities in Tompkins County. Well, we've got kind of a metro network that includes the city of Ithaca. So we've already got fiber optics connection and with firewalls between our two networks. So they actually can deploy and use you know, the Laserfiche suite in its fullest capability, like any department in the county can. With the other remote locations, we're doing it through the web interface tools within Laserfiche. So not as much functionality, but for their use, we started with just the back file conversion with them based on the record set, and now they're picking up from day one and moving forward and scanning directly from their offices through the web portal. Does that answer your question?
So you put the web portal in, or the web interface in the DMZ on your side?
Yes, yeah. So we've got it in the DMZ, and then we punch through the firewall for the connectivity. Yeah, we did. One word of advice in terms of planning for a project like this. We actually started with Laserfiche internally for the county, configured everything, thought we were on the right path. And once we got into the bigger concept of the project, we had to back out of that configuration and start all over. So we went from 3 servers to 7 virtual servers with redundant SANs. So it really exploded for us. And on the IT side, it was, you know, if I had to do anything over again, if you could think through what your ideal is and configure your back-end systems to accommodate that, if you think you're going that direction, it's definitely worthwhile to do it up front.
Anything else? All right, thank you.